Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I grew up as a pastor's kid. As I grew up, I saw the frustrations and often heard my parents discussing one or another of their pastor friends who had grown cynical in the latter years of their ministries. I'm not sure they had the term burnout then, but one of them, but that's what they were describing. Now, there may be all sorts of reasons for that burnout, but one of them is that it's fairly well known in pastor circles that what we do is a work that doesn't produce anything. Pastors can work for years and never see any results of their work. In fact, the standard line is that the next pastor reaps the harvest that you sowed. I do think there's some truth to that. In my first parish, there was a place for me to have a vegetable garden, and so I had one. As I learned to be a pastor, I also made sure that I did something that ended up with a product. I literally saw the fruit of my labors. This week we are exploring together some of the mountains in the Old Testament that provide a significant place in the life of Israel. They were the places God acted and where the people of Israel were formed as God's people. Today we want to look at Mount Nebo. I actually got to look at Mount Nebo when I went to Israel about 25 years ago. We were near the Dead Sea, and on the other side, in the country of Jordan, we saw a tall mountain. Our guide pointed it out and said, "That's Mount Nebo." And while we couldn't go over there because of the border crossing, we marveled that we were in the Promised Land, looking at the place from which Moses himself looked into the Promised Land. That's the significance of Mount Nebo. The importance and significance of the Exodus and Moses himself can't be overstated. For Israel, whenever anyone might ask, "What has your God done for you?" they could point to this event and say, right here our God entered history and saved us. Most other religions don't have that kind of heritage. Still, all the wandering in the wilderness as they approached the Promised Land, after all that, God indicated to Moses that he would not be the one to lead those final steps into the Promised Land. It must have been devastating for Moses to realize that he would not see the Exodus completed, that his dream would be unfulfilled. On the other hand, Moses seems remarkable in his trust in God, and perhaps he understood that the entry into the land was the time for the old to be put away and new leadership to come forward. Moses led the time of coming out. Joshua would lead the time of going in. The season of Moses' leadership was past, and now was the time for God's new direction. In Deuteronomy 34 we read, "Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And the Lord showed him the whole land, Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the Negeb and the plain, that is, the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. The Lord said to him, This is the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, as the Lord commanded. He buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his burial place to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His sight was unimpaired, and his vigor was not abated. The Israelites wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the period of mourning for Moses was ended. Moses would not see the final completion, but still he trusted in God's faithfulness. Moses had a vision in leading God's people, and here at the end, God gave him a vision, a chance to see where it would be completed. I have told you before how when I was serving a church in Myrtle Beach, rather often I needed to travel to Charleston to the medical university to see a church member who was receiving health care there. If you aren't from South Carolina, you might not know this, but the road from Myrtle Beach to Charleston is one of the most boring roads you can imagine. Most of it is in a national forest, so all you see is trees. And when there is something else to look at, you take every opportunity to do so. One time when I was driving down just south of a small town called Alwyndaw, I saw an African Methodist Episcopal church, and for some reason paid attention to it this time. It was called Mount Nebo AME Church. I thought, Mount Nebo? With all the mountains mentioned in the Bible where great things of faith happened, why would anyone name their church after Mount Nebo? Mount Nebo is where Moses stood to get his only glimpse of the Promised Land. And all of a sudden I knew that was a great name for a church. From Mount Nebo you can glimpse the Promised Land. Their church aspired to be that, a place from which you could glimpse the Promised Land God has for us. You may have unrealized goals and unfulfilled visions in your life, like Moses. Take heart. Climb Mount Nebo. Know that God is with you and God is faithful. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.